In these bleak times, I have decided to run for truth and justice, which takes the form of running for president of the United States as a candidate for the People's Party. I enter into quest for truth. I enter into quest for justice. And the presidency is just one vehicle to pursue that truth and justice, what I've been trying to do all of my life. I come from a tradition where I care about you. I care about the quality of your life. I care about whether you have access to a job with a living wage, decent housing, women having control over their bodies, health care for all, de-escalating the destruction of the planet, the destruction of American democracy. Democracy creates disruption. It creates an eruption. It creates an interruption. Wide from below, the energies of everyday people is manifest. And I know there are precious people in your life who you care for. That's why it's important for you to be involved, important for you to participate. We're not talking about hating anybody. We're talking about loving. We're talking about affirming. We're talking about empowering those who have been pushed to the margins, because neither political party wants to tell the truth about Wall Street, about Ukraine, about the Pentagon, about big tech. Neo-fascists like Brother Trump or milquetoast neoliberals like Brother Biden. Wow, well, I'm so happy to make a world-shaking decision. You know what I mean? Well, I know gangsters when I see them. And gangster's not a subjective expression. It's an objective condition. Do we have what it takes? We shall see. But some of us are going to go down fighting, go down swinging with style and a smile, accenting the best in you and trying to tease out the best in me. Let's do it together.
I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like. So what you think? That's what I'm just going to ask and raise in this short video here in a special edition of I Mix What I Like here at BPM. Again, I'm Jared Ball, happy to be your host. What do you think? There it is. Better than Feel to Burn? Better than Hope and Change? I don't know. Let's have a look. In a piece here by Chris Hedges, Dr. Cornel West announces he is running for president. Get a strong endorsement from one of his comrades, someone well known to those on the left and beyond. And he says here that Cornel West will be a singular voice for serious social and political change in an electoral system saturated with corporate money and rigged to crush third parties. We've got to get beyond an analysis of the predatory capitalist process. This is Cornel West being quoted here. As Cornel West says here, we've got to get beyond an analysis of the predatory capitalist processes that have saturated every nook and cranny of the culture. We've got to get beyond the ways in which the political system has been colonized by corporate wealth and by moneyed elite. Short thing, although I do as a bias for years, just I have an increasing dislike, especially after reading George Jackson again, of these kinds of phrases, predatory capitalist processes. Why isn't it just capitalism? This idea that there's still this need to put a prefix to soften it. And the same thing, a political system colonized by corporate wealth. Well, because we are existing in a settler colonial situation. We are internally colonized. So of course, by definition, all that occurs in a colony is colonized, but when people is colonized. So then again, it's that kind of phrasing that points to a radical language, but isn't meant to drag people or bring people, welcome people, I should say, to a different, if not elevated, consciousness or analysis. Just my humble opinion. Hedges continues, if this campaign becomes a movement, it will need a lot of organizing to get Cornel on the ballot and build grassroots support. And the array of forces that will seek to discredit and sabotage his candidacy will be formidable. Already mentioning the Israeli lobby, the war industry, courtiers in the media, corporatists, billionaire class, the Democratic Party leadership itself, and so on. And Hedges is right about that. The Democratic Party has an arrogance against the working and poor people of all colors. That is another fact. There is no way that the Democratic Party can get away with this anymore, says Cornel West, after running through the list that we're all very familiar with here of Democratic Party supported crimes against humanity, war crime, and just the business, the daily business of empire. Hedges says his goal, that is West's goal, is the abolition of poverty. Certainly down with that. And then what I think is interesting, and I want to come back to this, is that what Hedges notes is what we see in Cornel West's presentation all the time. Reference to many Black women and men who of importance to radical histories, and others, not just Black, but I just wanted to note that for a particular reason that I'm going to come back to in a moment. Reminding us of this radical tradition that is West is an extension of. Hedges continues, he said he will take his campaign south and into rural enclaves to address the disenfranchised white workers who support Trump. We must go to Trump's social base, West says. We cannot defeat fascism with glib, milquetoast neoliberalism, says West. We've got to get to the roots of it. Hence my previous point about understanding the settler colonialism, the colonization, capitalism, period, full stop. No need to give it a particular prefix. And of course, again, after recently on this platform dealing intently with George Jackson, it is obviously easy to fully agree with this point here about fascism not being met with milquetoast neoliberalism. The first thing to do is break the back of the two-party system, to break the back of corporate duopoly. If we don't, everything is at stake: democracy, dignity, the planet. Yep. And then Hedges reminds us of everything that he and of the long struggle he's been walking with alongside West within. I was with Cornel when Bernie Sanders delegates, disgusted by the machinations of the Democratic National Committee against their candidate and his endorsement of Hillary Clinton, walked out of the convention. Cornel turned to me and said presciently, "Bernie lost his political moment," end quote. Now, again, I can't help but feel like, I was part of this, unfortunately too small crowd that was saying that from the beginning, that this was predictable, and all of the energy in support of that would have been better served, as I've even said to Cornel West directly on a number of occasions, in fact. And I don't know if we got to it on this platform, but I know in passing and in various instances over the years, I've said to him, why aren't you supporting the numbers of alternative parties and campaigns, et cetera, and so forth, going back well before 2008, when he told me and many others, obviously not just me, but over the years, that it was important to support Obama as an advance of some kind. And then here we are, so again, part of it is me wanting to say, I told you so, welcome to the party, pun intended. But, the other part of it is there's nothing to disagree with here in terms of what he's saying or what is being said by Hedges here. It's just a wonder a little bit, like, I don't think it was anyway. It's good to see that he got here. So now that's at least my initial reaction. That this is at least a step forward. This is progress. West, with his skills as an orator, with his advanced at least analysis. He's not some reactionary, retrograde, whatever we and I might disagree with, but and his popularity, I think, will be an advance and helpful. I would like to think it will be helpful in pushing forward the idea that we have to have electoral strategies far to the left that we from where we are now. But there are a couple issues that are a little concerning here. One of which is that he's doing this within the People's Party. And as we've talked a little bit about here, I know Sister Jackie has talked a little bit about this party, obviously going back to their rage again. And as you see here, even on their homepage, the rage against the war machine. This is their neoliberal libertarian rally. That sort of had us in the not us so per se, but certainly that had Jackie targeted, and then me used or misused in an attempt to get at her. But because not just it wasn't personal in particularly in this sense, in the sense that what caused the attack on Jackie was her quite accurate raising of the criticism of who is this anti-war group. And not all anti-war efforts are the same. And this idea that a very rightward libertarian, white supremacist adjacent, if not fully embracing group is not necessarily where we need to be. So it's a little disconcerting. Now, having paid a little bit of attention to the People's Party, I even during the pandemic went to one of their actions here in Maryland against one of the state senators. And I just part of it was I wanted to get out of the house. Part of it I was curious about what this new party was. I was curious if I would recognize any of the people there, and I did not. So I don't know, and I will say that at one point I would have felt more aggressive in this, that if making the point that I feel like, if you are truly on the left in the DMV area of a certain age, I feel like we would have crossed paths. And so that I didn't recognize anyone was a little concerned. But admittedly, I haven't been, I don't think I have a right to that claim anymore. And there's certainly a new generation, several younger generations have come up. And Nick Brana, the head of the party at the time, and I think still is certainly younger. And and coming out of a social political environment that I'm not familiar with, including the Bernie Sanders environment. He comes out of the Bernie Sanders campaign, which I thought was an interesting break at the time. There's been a number of issues that have come up with him apparently in the party over the last year or so. But I haven't been following it, so I really don't know. The only issue I have a little bit paid attention to is their relationship to this rally and the folks involved here. And that was a bit of a concern, I will acknowledge. So the same thing here. So I started to feel like this is for the libertarian elements of the disaffected Bernie left. This is their after party effort. I don't know yet whether so I already know electorally I'm not going to vote for the Democrat or Republican candidates. Whether I vote for the Green or some other alternative, I don't know. Whether I vote for Cornel West, I don't know. I'll be interested to see what kinds of discussions we generate around here vis-a-vis electoral politics in this particular campaign. But these are the contradictions of neoliberal politics, because, of course, if we were going to vote for any candidate, we're going to have to, if we expect the electoral politics to mean anything, we're going to have to cast our votes with people that we don't like, we don't agree with. That's just the case. It's certainly true whether we were voting for, whether you all were, because I certainly wasn't voting for Obama or any of these other Democratic Party candidates. I haven't voted for a Democratic Party candidate since Bill Clinton's first election. And I regret even that, but which was my first, eligible election. But right. Was I eligible for Bush 1? I might have been and didn't vote. Was I? Right, I turned 18. No, I turned 18 in 1989, right, so I didn't no, I wasn't eligible till Clinton's first run. Anyway, uh, um, and that was the first and last time I've voted for a Democrat. So at that level, at least, I think I voted for lower level. I don't know, I have to think about that, certainly for president. But so I don't know, I'd be interested to see what conversations we generate here, and certainly we'll continue to follow this beyond this initial video and or whatever said on the Remix Morning Show, or anywhere else on the platform. But the point is, we'll continue to discuss this. But so that was I'm interested in that. But there's another piece to this. Remember, I asked. Well, let me do it this way. So when I said that this is their after party, I just want to remind everybody sort of what I'm talking about here. The after party for electoral politics, because the after party is always better. And very quickly, I'm just simply, my point was we need to have a radical approach to electoral politics if we're going to engage electoral politics at all. It needs to be done differently. I've been saying I'm a Malcolm X voter. The idea that we have to produce, and this is why I'm saying what the People's Party has done here is for the libertarian and whoever else they can grab in, their version of this. It is that we have to engage at the level of developing platforms, campaigns, parties, candidates. As Glenn Ford used to describe, the bright line issues that we establish must be the baseline minimum to get our vote. And it can't just be we'll vote for the lesser of evil. We'll vote for whoever they descend upon us, whatever corporate militarist, et cetera, and so forth, and then we react. That isn't, I think, at all useful. And as Cornel West was saying in his statements here and in Chris Hedges' piece, that's exactly the point he's making. The difference is he's being supported by a more resourced, organized, effective at this point neoliberal, libertarian, white supremacist, capitalists, maybe slightly left of that. I don't know, whatever this group is, but that's who they are. It may be an advance. At this point, I do see this as an advance from the two-party system, but not certainly what we need. And it's certainly not the political party that, as we're going to get to later in the later chapters of Blood in My Eye with George Jackson, becomes the overt political party that popularizes revolution. I don't see this doing that, but maybe Cornel West does, and maybe he's right. And then some of the bright lines that I was suggesting that need to be on the table for our effort are GDP redistribution at the stage before any sort of revolutionary establishment of a new economy entirely. Redistribute the gross domestic product, well over 20 trillion at this point. Universal health care, Medicare for all at age 18, period, full stop. Abolition and dual power, police and military, quote unquote, reform. Apply this locally in microcosmic examples in local elections. And as Max Rameau of the Pan-African People's Pan-African Community Action has said, power, not reform, and that this is phase one of a broader political project with the goal of being political power. And by that I mean the ability to define phenomena, have it act in a desired manner, not in some, again, vague vote for a Democrat, lesser of evil way. And that's essentially it. And I think that this is, and there are links, I'll put links to other discussions of the after party that you know, but that's in summary what I'm simply advocating that we do as we engage electoral politics. And then maybe it brings us into some sort of unity without uniformity with the People's Party and others in certain campaigns, et cetera. And maybe this is the first one to do it. I don't know. But as I said, I wanted you all to make note of what Chris Hedges recounts, as I think we've all seen Cornel West do in terms of reminding us of the brilliance and beauty and depth of and radicalness of blackness. Because this was also sent to me, and shout out to Josh and Aaliyah who help behind the scenes with this program often, and always inviting them to do more. Uh, uh, but they sent me a couple things, including the West announcement and this other piece, which is, I think, fascinating, and I certainly had missed it. And I wonder if this is meant to be part of West's political plan. A co-authored piece in Wall Street Journal opinion section, DeSantis's revolutionary defense of the classics. Now, for a long time, if folks remember, and if anyone's familiar, for a long time, the African-centered world, the actual left black radical world has had problems with Cornel West, some of which coming from, and this, particularly the African-centered world, stemming from this issue here. Cornel West has as much as he loves to tell us about his love of blackness, he certainly has a love of European classical literature as well, going all the way back to Race Matters. For those of us who remember reading that and his early emergence, he comes out of European classics. He has a very strong relationship with those what they call the European or the classics or the European classics. And much like Norman Finkelstein in his new book, much like some, maybe this is a generational thing, who are of even nominal left academics and others, activists, there's this sort of backlash in defense of these European classics when world majority people are saying, hold up. Yeah, Shakespeare's dope, but maybe he's only considered to be so dope because he wrote in the language of the dominant empire. What if we read other languages and heard from other people from other worldviews? Would we not find? And people are struggling. And if you read in Finkelstein's book, I was polite with him in his. I don't even know if we got to it in our interview, but he really goes in on this. Like, he's got a real problem with this, with world majority people saying we want to read our folks and have them be considered on the level of the Europeans. Well, West and his co-author Jeremy Wayne Tate here don't feel that way. In fact, they've said Ron DeSantis just gave a welcome boost to the classical education movement. He signed legislation allowing high school students to qualify for Bright Futures scholarships, a state fund for college education, by submitting scores from the classic learning test instead of the SAT alone. Now, on the one hand, you might think, yeah, this is good. We don't want to put everything on the SAT. But what does this also encourage? But this move will likely be portrayed wrongly as partisan and conservative, but the greatest works of civilization have always been about spurring, not preventing radical change. So again, they're not only saying that it's good to break away from the SAT as a standard bearer alone, but that the classic learning test or from the Bright Futures scholarship is doing a lot of the cultural norming and soft power imperialism that the SAT does, in saying you have to read in this way and think in this way to be considered intelligent. And then to go a step farther and to say that these works of civilization are about spurring radical change. Well, I don't know. I'm not an expert in these classics, but I don't know to what extent they comport with my definition of revolution. Many seminal works, the authors write, of literature, history, philosophy, science, and theology were revolutionary in their respective ages. Aha. So when they talk about Galileo, they're talking about his threat, and Sir Isaac Newton. They're talking about the threats to the established church-led orthodoxy. Aha, okay. Certainly revolutionary. certainly revolutionary. Albert Einstein, interesting. We're encouraged to remember him for his theory of relativity, but what to me made him a radical was his theory of socialism and his allegiance with Du Bois. But we don't hear as much about that. So if we're going to say, if we're going to argue that Einstein is revolutionary, it should be in that context as much, at least, as in the context of the hard sciences, because even as Einstein, as I understand it, came into struggle in his own lifetime, if the hard sciences are dope, but if under the control of Nazis and capitalists and an empire, maybe it's not. But this was the part here. So they throw in Dr. King, and a reference to Dr. King as being part of these classics, connecting him, of course, only to do so to people like Alexander Solzhenitsyn and Thomas Aquinas. But this is the line here. And if we ever, and I've reached out to Cornel West to invite him back to the platform. This will be maybe, this is in my, not number one, my top 3 questions. How in the hell, Dr. West, is James Madison listed here as a classical revolutionary author? Because in his quote, not quote, but in his, what is said here, his fear of printing his name in the Federalist paper had him print under an alias. Since when is a member of the ruling elite 0.1%, slave owner, enslaver, who in Michael Parenti's book Democracy for a Few we can see being recounted as saying proudly how he could something like buy someone, an African, for $15 and sell him for $200. How does he get counted here among a revolutionary set of classical literature, because he wrote the Federalist Papers, which to me, thinking of number 10 in particular, ensconce class, ensconce and protect his class and his ruling elite against democracy and freedom. And of course, he didn't care about that because he was an enslaver of African people. So, oh man, Dr. West. But as they conclude, that's one of the virtues of the classics. They are means of considering what is true without invoking the blind partisanship that encourages thoughtless action. Really, blind partisanship? So we should be blindly unpartisan, or we should be decidedly unpartisan when reviewing and considering Madison? I don't think so. I don't think we should be unpartisan if partisan is to be understood as beyond Democrat Republican. I'm not unpartisan when reviewing anything. And nobody is revolutionary who owns human beings. I don't care what time of day or year or era they're in. Because what people do, and this is what I always liked about Howard Zinn's A People's History, Zinn reminded you that while there were all these white folks running around here enslaving folks, they were also suppressing the white radicals who were condemning that. So this isn't just to defend white folks, but it's to say, if we're going to raise up the classics of Europe, raise up those folks and stop evading and omitting them in favor of your favorite imperialist who just maybe wrote something you liked as he was likely enslaving someone or brutalizing someone else. Anyway, they conclude there's nothing we need more today than a civilization of reasoning and understanding. That's why Mr. Desantis' support of classic education has universal merit that transcends partisanship. Education based on values, logic, and discipline isn't Republican. It's timeless. So, you know, I have thought that I was hoping maybe that this was tongue in cheek, that this was a little bit of irony. But I don't know. And thanks again to Josh. I think
you for
Leah, who
1 minute.
Thanks to Josh and Aaliyah who sent me this clip of West's co-author. Let's just be introduced to Jeremy Wayne Tate.
Hey, good morning, Twitter. It has been a while since I made a Twitter video. Hey, I want to just challenge you for 1 minute here with a thought experiment. Many of you know already my life's work, the classic learning test, is challenging the College Board. Now, you may know very little, or maybe you know a whole lot already about the College Board, but I would argue they are the most powerful entity in American education. They own the AP test, the AP curriculum, the PSAT, the SAT, Accuplacer, on and on and on. And why this matters so much is because in education, what you put on the test ends up driving the curriculum. And for the past 20 years or so, the College Board has gone full-blown ideological. Students a couple years ago were reading Bernie Sanders on the SAT. They don't even try to hide it. But imagine for a moment, just as a thought experiment, imagine if students were prepping for the SAT or for that most important college entrance exam, and they knew that they were likely to see a passage from Aristotle's Ethics or from Plato's Republic, or maybe from Dante, or some of the thinkers that were so influential, John Locke, others in America's founding, right? This thought tradition is wholly censored from the College Board. And that is why we're seeing a crisis in civics, a crisis in basic knowledge about America's founding, how and why we really are the most ingenious system of government to ever exist.
Wow, really? So he's so as I understand, he's just a defender of European classics and the greatest political experiment in world history, the United States. So Bernie Sanders, he's saying, is too partisan, but slave owners and those who defended slavery, as did the Greeks, because remember, all that democracy talk was for the landowning elite, just like the founding fathers of this country, so-called, and James Madison. It wasn't for everybody else. So, I mean, all this stuff is, but anyway, putting us all this together, I think, is the same thing. We need to engage electoral politics, academia, political struggle on our own terms, on our own basis, for our own desired goals and outcomes. When and where we make unity and align with others should be based on that pre-existing set of goals and ideas, and to what extent those allegiances bring value to those ideas, goals, because that's clearly what they're doing. And the neoliberal side has enlisted Cornel West to bring about a world that is more comfortable for them and on their terms. It may in fact be a step forward. It may in fact be an advance, but it's certainly, from my humble point of view, not the form of engagement that I think we should be reaching when dealing with electoral politics, academia, civilization, a political struggle. In other words, again, we would be engaging once again on someone else's terms, hoping that they'll be good for us. So, all right, that said, let's keep the conversation going. Obviously, this will be the first of many around this and similar issues. So make sure you like, share, subscribe, join if you can, blackpowermedia.org for more. Catch you next time here at I Mix What I Like. Peace, like Fred Hampton used to say, only if you're willing to fight for it. Thanks, everybody.